I've worked at this upscale rooftop restaurant for 5 years now. The skyline view alone justifies the outrageous prices, and the clientele. Let's just say they're used to getting what they want, whether it's a $200 steak or someone's dignity. I'm a waitress here, not a doormat. And last Friday proved exactly that. It started like any other night. I was covering table 9, the VIP booth, a reservation held under the name Logan Whitmore. The name rang a bell. Turns out, Logan wasn't just any customer. He was the only son of Charles Whitmore, real estate tycoon, hedge fund monster, and one of the most powerful men on the East Coast. Logan strutted in late, reeking of entitlement and expensive cologne. Dressed like he just stepped off a yacht, sunglasses still on indoors, flanked by 2 silent, yes men, who didn't seem to serve any purpose other than to nod at everything he said. He barely glanced at the menu before waving me over. "You," he said, tapping the table without looking up. "Come here." I approached with the forced smile we're all trained to wear. "Yes, sir. May I take your order?" He leaned back, lips curled into a smug grin. "What's your name?" I answered politely. "That's a lovely name," he said, dragging out the syllables like he was tasting the word. "You've got a nice look. Exotic. Ever thought about doing something more glamorous than serving food?" His friends chuckled. I didn't. "Sir, I'm here to take your order. Not your opinions on my career." He raised an eyebrow, then laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd heard all week. "Oh, she's got fire," he said. "That's cute. I like that." Then, with a disgusting lack of subtlety, he leaned in and said under his breath, "If you play your cards right, I could change your life tonight." I stood there, stunned, not because I hadn't heard disgusting offers before, but because this was the most arrogant, brazen attempt I'd ever experienced. The worst part? He expected me to say thank you. The air around the table tightened. His 2 companions stopped laughing. Even they could tell he'd crossed a line. But Logan? Still smiling. I slowly straightened up, cleared my throat, and said loud enough for the tables nearby to hear, "I'm not here to be flirted with. I'm not here to be bought. I'm here to serve food, with respect. You want to change someone's life? Start by changing your manners." The laughter at his table stopped cold. For a moment, even Logan looked confused, like no one had ever dared to speak to him like that. His ego didn't take it well. He slammed his glass on the table, splashing water onto the white linen. "Do you even know who I am?" he snapped. "Sure," I replied calmly, "you're the guy who just embarrassed himself in public." Gasps came from the surrounding tables. A few diners even turned to watch. You could feel the tension crackling like a live wire. Logan's jaw clenched. He stood, towering over me, fists at his sides. "You're fired. I'm going to make one call and end your whole career." I raised an eyebrow. "You don't sign my paychecks. My manager does." And trust me, he saw the whole thing. Right on cue, my manager Tom approached. He looked pale but determined. "I think it's best if you leave, Mr. Whitmore," he said carefully. "You're siding with her. Do you know what you're risking?" Tom glanced at me, then back at him. "The only thing I'd be risking is this restaurant's dignity if I allowed behavior like that to continue." Logan looked like he was about to explode. But instead, he stormed off, pushing over a chair on his way out. And just when I thought the night couldn't get more surreal, a loud whirring noise filled the air. Every head turned toward the outdoor balcony. A helicopter was landing, the noise grew deafening. Wind whipped through the rooftop as wine glasses rattled and napkins flew. Diners shielded their eyes from the gust. And then, through the whirl of blades, a tall man in a tailored suit stepped out of the helicopter. Silver hair, steel eyes, and the kind of presence that made the room collectively hold its breath. Charles Whitmore. The Charles Whitmore. He wasn't just Logan's father. He was the empire. The kind of man who shook hands with presidents and made CEOs cry behind closed doors. And now, he was walking across our rooftop toward me. Not toward his son. Me. Logan was standing near the edge of the terrace, fuming. "Dad! What are you doing here?" Charles didn't even look at him. He walked straight up to me, nodded respectfully, and said, "Miss, I believe I owe you an apology." The entire rooftop went silent. I blinked. "Excuse me." "I got a call," he said, "from a staff member. Told me my son had just embarrassed our entire name in front of 50 high-value guests, and a woman who clearly has more integrity than he'll ever understand." I glanced around. Tom looked just as stunned as I was. Charles turned, addressing the room like a seasoned diplomat. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption. My son has a long journey ahead of him, not in finance, not in luxury, but in humility. Tonight, he failed." Then he turned back to me. "And you? You passed a test that wasn't yours to take. But you passed it anyway. With poise, dignity, and fire." He reached into his pocket and handed me a business card, not the usual polished type. This one was matte black with a gold-embossed logo I recognized from luxury architecture campaigns. "Call me," he said. "I'm offering you a position. Not in service, but in leadership. You've got the spine for it. And in my world, that's rarer than diamonds." I stared at the card in my hand, half expecting it to vanish like some sort of dream. The logo gleamed beneath the terrace lights, Whitmore Global Ventures. Real estate, hospitality, tech investments, they had their fingers in everything. And now, this man, the titan behind it all, was offering me a role. My voice cracked slightly. I don't even know what to say." "You don't need to say anything now," Charles replied, calm and precise. "Take a few days. Call me if you're interested. Or don't. Just know, that kind of integrity, that kind of strength, it doesn't go unnoticed." Behind him, Logan was fuming. Red-faced. Jaw clenched. He looked like a child being scolded in front of the entire school. "This is insane," Logan snapped. "She disrespected me." Charles turned to him slowly. "No, son. She respected herself. Something you clearly haven't learned to do." The words hit harder than any slap. Logan looked like he'd been punched in the gut. The surrounding tables were dead silent, not even forks moved. Every diner had witnessed this billionaire family drama unfold like a live courtroom reckoning. Charles turned back to me one last time. "The offer stands. You don't need to be rich to lead. You just need to stand when it matters." He gave a slight nod to Tom, then walked back to the helicopter, his long coat fluttering behind him like a cape. The blades fired up again. Within seconds, the helicopter was rising into the sky, disappearing into the city lights. I looked down at the card again. My hands were still shaking as the noise of the helicopter faded into the night sky. The rooftop buzzed, not with music or conversation, but stunned silence. Then, like a slow wave, the applause began. It started at table 4, then table 7, then it spread until the entire restaurant was clapping. For me. I stood frozen, still gripping the card, heat rising in my face. I wasn't used to attention like this. I was just doing my job, wasn't I? Tom approached and gently touched my shoulder. "You all right?" "I think so," I breathed. He smiled. "You didn't just handle yourself well. You raised the bar for this entire place. I've never been prouder to have someone on my team." I nodded, still processing everything. Is Logan banned?" Tom chuckled. "Effective immediately." I finally managed a laugh, shaky, but real. That night, I finished my shift. I refused to leave early, even when several guests offered to tip me personally. I didn't want special treatment. I just wanted to go home with my head high. As I stepped into the elevator, card still clutched in my hand, I knew something had shifted. Not just in my career. In my life that I didn't sleep that night. The business card lay on my nightstand like it was made of solid gold. I kept staring at it, wondering if it was real, wondering if I'd dreamt the whole thing. The next morning, I brewed some coffee, took a deep breath, and called the number. A woman with a crisp voice answered on the second ring. Whitmore Global Ventures. Executive Office. I was told to call this number. My name is, we've been expecting your call, she interrupted with a warm tone. Mr. Whitmore cleared his schedule for you. Can you come in this afternoon? I blinked. Yes. Absolutely. A black car picked me up at noon and drove me to a mirrored skyscraper that made my apartment building look like a dollhouse. Inside, I was escorted to the top floor, where Charles Whitmore was waiting, no cameras, no press. Just him and a folder. I meant what I said, he told me. Leadership starts at the ground level. You've got instincts I trust more than most of the Ivy League egos I deal with daily. He offered me a position, ethics officer in a new hospitality division he was building. Full salary. Relocation package. A team to lead. I was speechless. Why me? I asked finally. Charles leaned back and said, because when my son crossed the line, you didn't flinch. You stood tall. That's exactly the kind of backbone this empire needs. I took the job. 3 weeks later, I walked into my new office, no longer balancing trays, but balancing decisions that mattered. I didn't lose who I was to get here. I stayed who I was, and that made all the difference. Logan? Let's just say his father sent him far away, to a mentorship program where no one cared about his last name. 6 months flew by. The girl who once served cocktails to billionaires was now sitting at the same table, not as a guest, not as staff, but as a decision-maker. My new role wasn't easy. I was tasked with building accountability systems across Whitmore's luxury properties, making sure every staff member, from janitor to executive chef, was protected from the kind of behavior I once faced. I hired people who had been overlooked their entire lives, not for lack of talent, but for lack of connections. That changed under my watch. And Charles? He became a mentor, not a boss. He'd drop by my office occasionally and say things like, "You still running this place better than I could?" I always smiled, but we both knew the answer. One afternoon, as I stepped into the company elevator, I caught a glimpse of someone just as the doors were closing. Logan. Same sharp suit. Same smug face, except this time, he looked humbled. He nodded at me. Not a word. Just a nod. And honestly, that was enough. He didn't need to apologize. Life had already made him listen. Back at my desk, I pulled open the drawer where I kept that original business card. I didn't need it anymore, but I kept it as a reminder, respect is earned. Dignity can't be bought. And real power? It starts with saying no when it matters most. A full year had passed since that rooftop night, the night that changed everything. Today was different. I was standing at a podium inside a gleaming conference hall at the Whitmore Global Leadership Summit. Executives, investors, and leaders from across the country had gathered for our annual keynote on workplace ethics and culture reform, a program I had built from scratch. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered. My name was now on the agenda. I took a deep breath, stepped up, and spoke. Exactly 1 year ago, I was a waitress standing up for myself against someone with far more money than respect. I wasn't trying to start a movement, I just refused to stay silent. What happened next reminded me of something important: your dignity is your greatest currency. The room was silent. Today, I oversee a global team dedicated to making sure no one is ever forced to choose between keeping their job or keeping their self-respect. Applause erupted. And in the front row, Charles Whitmore, smiling with quiet pride. Beside him, Logan, dressed conservatively, eyes focused, hands folded. He looked different. Like someone who'd been through fire and chose to rebuild. After the summit, he approached me. "I've been working with your ethics team," he said quietly. "It's changed me. Thank you, for not letting me stay the person I was." I nodded, genuinely. Growth starts when ego ends. We shook hands, as equals. I never imagined a helicopter, a confrontation, and a business card would lead to all this. But here we were. And the girl who once carried trays now carried the room. 2 years later, my story had traveled far beyond anything I expected. Podcasts, articles, panels. Even a best-selling business book had quoted my rooftop moment as the spark that reignited corporate ethics in luxury service. But that wasn't the part one was proudest of. The real legacy. The Empower program. With Charles Whitmore's full backing, and Logan's surprising involvement, we launched a global initiative to train, support, and promote overlooked frontline workers. Not just in Whitmore's empire, but across dozens of partner companies. Housekeepers became supervisors. Doormen became directors. Former servers were now stakeholders. We didn't just change one company. We started a quiet revolution. And the girl who said no when it mattered most? She became the face of it, not for fame, but to prove a simple truth: you don't have to be powerful to make power uncomfortable. You just have to stand when others sit. I still kept that first business card in a frame on my office wall, next to a photo of my old team from the restaurant. That rooftop job wasn't my beginning. It was my training ground. Every week, I still made time to return there, not as a guest, but as a silent observer. I'd tip big, smile at the servers, and leave quietly. Because I never wanted to forget where it started. 3 years to the day after that unforgettable rooftop moment, I found myself back where it all began, not as a waitress, not even as a guest. This time, I was there for someone else. Her name was Ava. She reminded me of, well, me. Sharp eyes. No-nonsense tone. Always 3 steps ahead of a table's needs, but too smart to be serving food for the rest of her life. I'd seen her handle rude customers, bad tips, and even an overbearing manager, all with grace and grit. I watched her shut down a pushy tech investor one night, calm, clear, unapologetic. After her shift, I waited for her outside near the staff entrance. She walked out, surprised to see me. Wait. You're her," she said, eyes wide. "You're the woman from the Whitmore thing." I smiled. "Now it's your turn." I handed her a sleek envelope. Inside, a job offer. Entry-level leadership. Training. Mentorship. A real path forward. "I've been watching," I told her. "You've got what it takes. But more importantly, you know when not to take it. That's leadership." Ava looked down at the offer, then back at me, speechless. "Why me?" I grinned. "Because someone once saw something in me when I didn't even see it in myself. Now it's my turn to pass it on." Tears welled in her eyes, but she stood tall. Just like I once did. And that was it. The moment I became what Charles Whitmore had been to me, the one who noticed, who believed, who opened the door. Legacy isn't about fortune or fame. It's about lifting someone else when no one else is looking. Months after bringing Ava into the program, something unexpected happened. She went viral. A short video had caught her in action, calmly de-escalating a tense situation at one of our partner properties, defending a junior employee from a high-profile guest's verbal abuse. The clip racked up millions of views overnight. And what did people call her? The next rooftop waitress. Suddenly, my inbox was flooded. Interviews. Panel invitations. Documentary pitches. People were inspired, not by me, but by the movement that had quietly grown out of one woman's refusal to stay silent. So, I decided it was time. Time to tell the full story. I sat down, turned on the camera, and recorded a message that would be shared across every platform, not flashy, not scripted. Just real. 3 years ago, I was a waitress on a rooftop, dealing with the kind of arrogance most people ignore. I stood up, not because I was brave, but because I was tired. That moment changed everything. But here's the truth, I didn't win because a billionaire's father showed up. I won because I knew who I was. That's what I want you to remember. Dignity is your foundation. Respect is your right. You never need permission to protect either. Stand when it's hard. Say no when it's uncomfortable. And when your moment comes, because it will, don't shrink. The world doesn't need more powerful people. It needs more powerful decisions. Be that decision. The video became more than viral, it became a movement. And that rooftop? It didn't just launch my career. It launched a legacy point 4 years later. The rooftop had changed. Renovated. Sleeker. More exclusive. But the view? Still the same, stars above, city lights below. Tonight, though, wasn't just about ambience. It was the first official gala of the Empower program. Dozens of leaders, once dishwashers, janitors, servers, now executives, directors, and founders, gathered in the very place where it all began. I stood at the edge of the terrace, holding a glass of sparkling water, watching as Ava gave the opening speech. Confident. Clear. Powerful. She'd become more than a success story, she was a force. Tom, my old manager, walked over and grinned. You turned the whole place upside down, you know that? I laughed. No. I just stopped pretending the floor was the ceiling. Suddenly, a familiar sound buzzed in the distance, a helicopter. Everyone turned. And for a moment, it felt like déjà vu. But this time, no tension. Just celebration. Charles Whitmore descended again, older, a bit grayer, but still commanding. He walked straight toward me and raised a toast. To legacy built on integrity, he said. To futures rewritten, I replied. As we clinked glasses, I glanced around at the rooftop full of people who were once invisible, now shining. The waitress had become the architect. The rooftop? No longer a battleground, now a symbol. Not of power. But of possibility.